A loud sound could be heard from the sky. The sound came from a massive maroon ancient bell that revolved ceaselessly. It gradually turned into bolts of maroon lightning that occupied the entire firmament, permeating the boundless void as they were rained down. A loud sound could be heard from the sky. The sound came from a massive maroon ancient bell that revolved ceaselessly. It gradually turned into bolts of maroon lightning that occupied the entire firmament, permeating the boundless void as they were rained down. Bell sounds were produced from each flash of the maroon lightning that could destroy everyone's spiritual soul. At that, a light of Buddha glared brilliantly. A silhouette with a magnificent golden frame suddenly appeared beneath the primary emperor. That figure was gleaming golden divine light, the light of Buddha. The light covered the whole atmosphere with its brightness. There was a gigantic halo blocking the sky. Runes of Buddhism could be seen above the halo. Each of the runes was brimmed with the great power of Buddhism. Within the runes, an incorporeal phantasm of Buddha was awakened as the sound of Buddha resounded in the atmosphere, clashing with the bolts of maroon lightning. Bam, bang, boom. All the apocalyptic attacks were completely nullified. Lifting his head to look at the sky, Futian could see the Buddha leading his legion of Buddhist cultivators as reinforcements. "What are you waiting for?" Futian asked in a deep voice. There were several great emperors who stood behind him. Their blood ran cold upon hearing his question. Those people were Futian the Great and his men. Truthfully, they did not see eye to eye with Futian since they were once enemies. However, they had no choice but to submit to his authority at that moment. Following that, they finally headed toward the battlefield of the gods. After glancing around the battleground, Futian the Great caught sight of a figure of a child. Although that child seemed to be not more than 10 years old, the aura that he exuded was rather formidable. Nevertheless, picking a kid as an opponent would be better on the battlefield full of gods. Immediately after he moved forward, he unleashed an emperor's might toward the child who walked out from the human ancestor's side. Activating the divine power of Futian, he launched a colossal great palm that was covering a big part of the sky at the kid, intending to take out the latter. However, that child raised his head to gaze at Futian the Great with an indifferent and derisive look. The latter furrowed his brows at the sight of the kid's disdainful demeanor. Right then, he instinctively sensed a dangerous aura. Within a split second, that child made a move and turned into a bolt of lightning. Then, he threw a punch with his tiny fist that seemed feeble at first but penetrated the Futian great palm with little effort and accelerated toward his opponent at an incredible speed. Please keep reading on MIB0XN0. Calm colors drained from the face of Futian the Great. To think that the Futian great palm that was generated with his divine power was effortlessly destroyed. Just how powerful was the force from that punch? With that, Futian the Great hastily withdrew from the scene. Nevertheless, that child turned himself into a flash of lightning and moved at full tilt. It was so fast that the former could not get away from the latter. In the next moment, that child raised his fist and hurled a punch at his enemy. A tremendous amount of power was imbued in such a simple punch from his small fist. The shock wave from the punch even caused the atmosphere to tremble. The divine silhouette of Futian manifested behind the figure of Futian the Great. Stretching his hands forward, he tried to fend off the attack. In the collision with the tiny fist of his opponent, the child's punch easily crushed his offense and struck his body, including the divine silhouette of Futian. Nothing could halt it in its tracks. Eventually, the body of Futian the Great was broken into pieces. His face blanched as terror flashed across his eyes. His technique was rendered ineffective by a single punch again. The spiritual soul of Futian the Great was disintegrated as he stared at the atmosphere in despair. Eventually, his figure and great path were reduced to nothingness. This fight had attracted the attention of many surrounding cultivators. After all, the one who had gone for the kill was a child with terrifying divine power. After turning his gaze in this direction, Futian caught sight of that child. Needless to say, this individual was no ordinary kid. To wield a divine power of this caliber, would this person be another exterior incarnation of the human ancestor? Gu Donglu turned his body into a flash of light and appeared above that child. A divine demon diagram manifested following that, causing the mood of the atmosphere to change drastically. Nonetheless, that child lifted his head and shot Gu Donglu a mocking and disparaging look. Moreover, the former even shot 2 rays of the divine light of annihilation from his eyes that traversed the void, firing at the latter. Immediately, an ominous sound filled the air as the scenery behind Gu Donglu began to transform into a massive catalogue that appeared to hold a world within it. A blood-curdling aura of the divine power permeated from the catalogue filled with immortals, monsters, demons, and gods. When the divine light of annihilation was fast approaching, a spectacular sword chi burst out of the catalogue, colliding with the former and cancelling out each other in the void. Futian did not worry much about his third senior brother, Gu Donglu, after watching the latter's fight because he had been meditating on the path-slaying cultivation. Hence, the man had become an extremely powerful cultivator. He should be able to handle an exterior incarnation that the human ancestor had created alone. There were destructive storms everywhere on the battlefield. The scale of the battle was so intense that the fabric of space was torn into pieces. Hence, it was the reason this war was called the Battle of the Gods. Their clashes in multiple locations had demolished the atmosphere of the heavenly realm, causing dimensional cracks to appear. With that, some of them left that place and headed to a different battleground. Fush. Some destructive turbulence swept across the location of Futian. Instantly, he set his eyes in the direction of the human ancestor and noticed that the latter was standing still on his spot as he turned his gaze to the former. He activated his divine power and circulated it within his body right after stepping forward. As expected, he had to be the one taking on the human ancestor personally, after all. Before he could land his first strike, a bolt of black lightning flashed across the void and came into sight. Noticing that, Futian came to a halt and turned to peer at the silhouette. To his surprise, that person was the Dark Sovereign. However, this time, the Dark Sovereign had unmasked herself, no longer keeping her identity a secret. The moment Futian paid attention to her, he was stunned by the revelation of her real face. Please keep reading on myb0xn0v.com. Although the Buddha of Destiny did not mention this to Futian, the latter had felt relieved by the fact. In retrospect, it would make sense why she could take control of a continent in the Dark World, which would eventually be called the Island of Miracles. After all, she was the exterior incarnation of the Dark Sovereign. In that case, there must still be some light left inside the heart of the Dark Sovereign so that an island of light without any dispute could exist in the Dark World, a place filled with open-hearted and genuine people. Perhaps, that was the ideal world the Dark Sovereign had ever wanted. Unfortunately, such a utopia could only stay as a fairy tale. Futian could tell that the Dark Sovereign was utterly disappointed at this world. Therefore, she had built the Kingdom of Darkness in the Dark World to destroy this world, plunging it into darkness so that light could be born in the absolutely wicked and corrupted world. She was a bigot. But even so, it couldn't change the fact that she had goodness in her heart. In contrast, the human ancestor might be deemed the progenitor of humankind and the embodiment of righteousness. But under the mask of his pretense, he was a man of absolute darkness who had shed innocent blood with his hands. He was the person who had started the War of the Seven Realms, one who had regarded the lives of the people as disposables. He too had wished to build his ideal world. A world that he had absolute control and sovereignty, a world of the gods where he was their creator. Did all those who had made it to the pinnacle of cultivation have the same extreme conviction? He noticed that the Dark Sovereign had been glaring at the human ancestor with an aloof look ever since her arrival. She was emanating a deadly and destructive aura constantly. This must probably be the reason behind the insurgence of the army of the Dark World previously. Was there any grudge or hatred between the Dark Sovereign and the human ancestor? After the Dark Sovereign, yet another beam of divine light descended. The evil emperor had arrived too. He had fought fiercely against the Dark Sovereign, but neither could defeat the other. After the Dark Sovereign, yet another beam of divine light descended. The evil emperor had arrived too. He had fought fiercely against the Dark Sovereign, but neither could defeat the other. However, the Dark Sovereign was not looking at the evil emperor right now. Instead, she kept staring at the human ancestor. "It's you, right?" she asked. The human ancestor was also looking at the Dark Sovereign. Then he said, "Cheer, why do you not greet your master?" Boom. Even though the Dark Sovereign already guessed it, her heart still twitched fiercely after receiving the answer. Her destructive aura swept through uncontrollably. Her eyes were filled with endless hatred as she glared at the other. The gods and battles surrounding them were also quite shocked inside. The human ancestor was the Dark Sovereign's master? But why did I have to do all that? As the will of the 6 emperors, the Dark Sovereign's mindset had always been very determined, but she still lost control of her emotions now, as she demanded at the human ancestor loudly. The sealed memories, the memories she had buried, now flooded her mind, taking over her entire brain. It was like a nightmare. It seemed now that the dreams from before were foreshadowing, or perhaps she had felt that this day would come. "Because you have a pure heart, so I chose you. This is your luck to go from a mundane human and transform into a god," the human ancestor said calmly. The Dark Sovereign seemed to be his experiment or project to create a god. "It is not only you. He is my choice as well. Otherwise, do you think you really would have the chance to prove your path?" The human ancestor said, looking at the evil emperor. Even Futian felt shaken inside. Half of the 6 emperors in the world had been created by him. The human ancestor had been creating gods since many years ago. He had also been controlling the state of the world these countless years. Everything was under his control. Please keep reading on MIB0XN0. Only the heaven realm was not under his control. The heaven realm first had the heavenly emperor and then the sovereign princess. They had all been very troublesome for him. In the current generation, it had passed on to Futian. The world of Buddhism and Devil World had nothing to do with the human ancestor. "Cheer, return to Master's side," the human ancestor said. "I could create you, so I can also destroy you. There is no need to be obsessed with past hatred and conflicts. You are a god now, a god standing at the peak of the world. You will help me manage the world from now on, becoming the leader of the gods. We will create a world of gods together." Boom. As soon as the human ancestor finished speaking, a horrifying world-ending tribulation appeared in the dome of the sky. Pitch-black divine tribulations dropped down. The entire world transformed into a dark and dead world. Seeing this scene, the human ancestor's brows furrowed, but he recovered after a moment and said to the Dark Sovereign, "Why do this to yourself?" He did not attack, but the evil emperor already had. Gold spatial divine light flashed and enveloped the vast space. It clashed against the other party's divine power. It was like a world-destroying battle had erupted in the place they were located in right now. But everyone on this battlefield seemed to be used to it already and was not shocked. There were divine battles everywhere with different great emperor cultivators in different spaces. Every grand battle was earth-shattering, destroying and upending the world. Futian glanced at this messy battlefield. Then his gaze moved towards the human ancestor. He had paused earlier, but now he started walking out again. The 9 dragons' divine light shimmered around his body and illuminated the sky, creating a natural phenomenon. A long spear appeared in Futian's hand, blazing with destructive divine light. The human ancestor looked up and gazed at Futian. His eyes grew a bit graver too. Then the clouds shone in the sky above the human realm, and countless beams of divine light fell, descending upon the human ancestor's body. He bathed under these beams of divine light. Then the human ancestor's body enlarged wildly. He crossed the vast space, covering the portion of the sky. His body was now big enough to cross stars as if he could destroy a continent with a finger. The human ancestor now was like a god of creation. He scrutinized the people and also examined the insignificant Futian. Before him, Futian was just like an ant. The human ancestor's eyes scanned Futian. Divine light shot out of his eyes and transformed into chaotic divine thunder. Countless divine swords appeared from this mass of chaos true thunder that shot towards Futian's body. It was like he could kill and destroy someone with just one glance. He was no longer borrowing power from the heavenly path. Instead, he was an existence comparable to the heavenly path. The thunder that his eyes summoned was the chaos true thunder. His force was the most original force in the world. It seemed that the space Futian was in was about to be flooded. The chaos true thunder's attack was coming, and he was too minuscule in comparison. It was like an average human standing in the heavens, facing the thunder and lightning from the heavens. He could be drowned and buried in an instant. If it were any other great emperor cultivator, they would not be able to fend off such a terrifying attack at all. Futian also understood why the other gods listened to the human ancestor's orders. In reality, the human ancestor already possessed supreme divine power after returning. Even great emperors were not enough to be treated with respect by him, let alone an average person. Please keep reading on MIB0XN0. Immense chaos true thunder flooded the world, sweeping toward Futian's body like a raging current. However, Futian's body was unmoving. He bathed in the light of the chaos true thunder. He was actually ignoring the human ancestor's super-strong attack. Futian's eyes were frightening, dazzling with divine light. He stared at the humongous and giant divine figure across from him. He was minuscule, but he had created his own micro-heavenly path. He had a path that was independent from the world. Nowadays, his great path was already complete. It would not be so easy to bring him down. The human ancestor was not surprised either. In a certain way, Futian was the one who was closest to him. He had created the micro-heavenly path with his mortal body, establishing his world and creating an independent law of time and space. Futian was already like a creator, a god of creation now. They were the only two who had made such accomplishments in this world. Boom! The human ancestor raised a fist and sent a blow towards Futian. When the blow landed, the space of the heaven realm started collapsing like crazy. All the law of the great path turned to dust under his punch. This punch did not seem to have the light of divine power, but it also seemed to contain the world's strongest force. The human ancestor had already returned to the basics. Every single move or action came from the source of the path. The divine light that shot out of his eyes was the power of chaos, while the intent of his punch could destroy a world. The windstorm swept over, shattering the void. The space around Futian's body started collapsing and crumbling crazily. His robes fluttered and his white hair flew. Moving his feet slightly, Futian stabbed his long spear forward. The moment he stabbed it out, the spear in his hands enlarged rapidly. It blazed with supreme divine light and penetrated the space with one blow, crashing against the incoming punch from the human ancestor. The instant that the blows crashed, a deep and low sound emitted from the vast world. Everyone felt this horrifying quake. Futian's body was forced into a retreat. That frightening fist intent also broke apart. The surrounding space was collapsing and cracking crazily while the frightening spatial currents ravaged wildly. Futian's body was forced into a retreat. That frightening fist intent also broke apart. The surrounding space was collapsing and cracking crazily while the frightening spatial currents ravaged wildly. But neither Futian nor the human ancestor cared at all. With their current cultivation states, they could pass freely within the space windstorm. Divine power of the world? Futian asked, looking at the human ancestor. Divine power is just the law and order. At present, I represent the law of the heavenly path, so why do I care about divine power? The human ancestor said. His voice reverberated through the vast and boundless world, making many cultivators feel their eardrums quivering. He was the heaven. He represented the heavenly path. His every casual move was the law. He was the law's incarnate itself. He agreed with what he heard from the other. After he had constructed the heavenly path world, his two eyes had transformed into the moon and sun, and he could form thunder and lightning by raising his hands. They were both the incarnates of the laws. Divine power was no longer important. The human ancestor's one punch was like the force of a world slamming down. One could imagine how aggressively powerful he was. Holy light enveloped Futian's body. He bathed under the halo, and natural phenomena occurred. The moon, sun, and stars revolved around him. Countless beams of light flowed around him like time and space were changing. The spear in his hand did not seem realistic, but it blazed with an incredible aura. With one thought, Yi Futian's body vanished. Bang! His body carried the long spear and stabbed into the human ancestor's giant body with a loud bang. The human ancestor's magnificent body was penetrated, and Yi Futian killed his way in. But then he discovered that he'd broken into a wintry world that could even solidify space. The human ancestor's physical body was its own world. Forcing in here did not seem meaningful. Please keep reading on IB0XN0. Boom. Yi Futian's body passed through from the other side, and he saw the human ancestor's broken body heal instantly. It was just like before. It seemed as if it had not been injured at all. Yi Futian's attack appeared to be futile and completely meaningless. I have transformed into the heavenly path and have an immortal body. Who can kill me? The human ancestor's voice was extremely domineering. He was the heaven, he was the path. He had finally become an undying god from a mere mortal and was now the supreme being. Now he would not die. No one in the world could kill him. No one is infallible, Yi Futian said in reply. Gods were people too. Since they were people, then there were no absolutely immortal beings. His body vanished from the spot once again. The frightening long spear attacked somewhere on the human ancestor's huge frame. A hole appeared on the human ancestor's body, but divine spatial light shot out of that hole to imprison him there. However, Yi Futian's body vanished instantly and reappeared somewhere else. He transformed into beams of light and streaks of shadows, sending blows onto the human ancestor's body again and again. The human ancestor's star-like body continuously shattered and collapsed. There were cracks everywhere, but just as he had said, he had an immortal body. This was not even his true form. It was just a clone. The human realm's divine light continued to wash over his body. His broken body sent down countless beams of destructive tribulation light shrouded over the vast void. It included chaos, true thunder, tribulations of destruction, and shredding swords. Yi Futian saw this scene while his body hovered in the air. His eyes swept towards the vast space. In an instant, everything in his vision was enveloped in a domain. The attacks coming at him murderously from all directions suddenly slowed down and then stopped. The human ancestor looked at Yi Futian. When he met Yi Futian's eyes, his gaze froze too, seeming to stop there. One could not call Yi Futian's eyes anymore. They represented time and space. Just as the human ancestor had said, they created a world and transformed it into the heavenly path. They had surpassed the category of physical bodies. Every part of their body was a path. Yi Futian looked at the still human ancestor. His two eyes transformed into paths and were extremely frightening. He looked towards the chaos, true thunder, tribulations of destruction, and shredding swords, and everything was destroyed. They were turned into nothingness and obliterated directly. All this time, Yi Futian had been pursuing the extremes of cultivation. What was extreme? How could you reach the extremes? He had not figured it out yet, but over these past years, he had at least taken a few more steps down that road. After his heavenly path world was completed, he could establish a divine domain of time and space. In that divine domain, he could change the flow of time. At the extreme, he could reduce the flow of time by 81 times. The difference of 81 times was close to stopping. But merely this was not enough. His father, Dong Huang the Great, cultivated the revelation divine power. The extremity of revelation was nothingness. He believed that nothingness was one of the final points of cultivation. The extremity of Buddhist was emptiness, for all to be empty. Were nothingness and emptiness similar? Building from that, Yi Futian figured out the ultimate path of destruction, an evolution of the path of time and space. Please keep reading on MIB0XN0. Time and space collapse. He gazed into the distance, and all objects in this space collapsed and shattered, getting destroyed and turning into nothingness. The chaos, true thunder, and tribulations of destruction were also extinguished like this. Yi Futian looked towards the majestic frame of the human ancestor. That frightening divine body was also collapsing and shattering. All physical objects were going to be destroyed and turned into nothingness. The long spear in Yi Futian's hands blazed with supreme divine power. His body flashed, and he stabbed the spear forward, hitting the human ancestor's majestic and giant body. In an instant, the entire time and space constricted rapidly and collapsed, turning into a horrifying black hole. Everything was going to be destroyed and buried. The human ancestor's boundlessly huge body was quickly shrinking too. It collapsed in an extremely short instant, shattering and turning into nothingness. It was swallowed by the black hole windstorm. This was also an evolution of the spear technique Entombed. It was practically an undefeatable spear attack. Soon, the majestic frame that had stood in the vast void was destroyed and disappeared. It seemed to have been buried by this spear, but Yi Futian did not relax. His eyes continued staring forward. This battle was a battle that determined the fates of every soul. He had always wanted to wait until he comprehended the ultimate truth of cultivation. He would never take the initiative to attack if not for the crisis of survival of the Seven Realms. Many people in the surrounding battlefields looked toward where the human ancestor had been. The human ancestor's magnificent body had been killed. Yi Futian had killed it. The hearts of many great emperors jumped in extreme shock. Nowadays, the 6 emperors were probably no longer Yi Futian's match. As for those average great emperors, they would be even less of a match for Yi Futian's spear. Was the human ancestor dead? Some great emperor battles even stopped. They stared at Yi Futian's battlefield. If the human ancestor had been killed, then it meant that this battle was over. But could the human ancestor die so easily? That had only been the human ancestor's clone. A horrifying aura circulated through the sky over the human realm, and limitless divine light shone down. An incredible and peerless divine might radiated out, causing the hearts of many strong figures to pulse. The human ancestor was all right as expected. Yi Futian had only killed the human ancestor's clone, his spokesperson in the human realm. The true human ancestor had not yet appeared. Not bad. Not bad. A voice traveled from the human realm. Divine light kept flowing in the dome of the sky as if an illusory figure was forming. It gave off a misty and intangible feeling. The law of time and space. And you've touched onto the level of substance. As expected of the god of creation, the voice continued to say, Yi Futian, I want to create a world of gods. You can manage the gods in my place. It would be an ideal land in the future, where all the law in the world is under control. Everything would operate according to my thoughts. The world would be so much more perfect than the current world. What you want is a puppet world. Only your thoughts exist in that world. And what is the significance of that kind of world? Yi Futian responded, looking toward the human realm. His voice rang through the void. What is the significance of this current world? And what was the significance of the ancient heavenly path world? The voice continued streaming from that heavenly path. Status, bloodshed. There will never be peace. It will cycle endlessly. How many people died in the war of the gods back then? How many would have had any shred of pity for the world? The people need an ideal world, a perfect world of gods. Yi Futian did not reply. Whether it was people or the world, there were always flaws. Perfection itself was a trap. Absolute perfection did not exist in the world. Was the world that the human ancestor planned to create genuinely perfect? It was only he who wanted it. He wanted everything to operate under his ideas. And now, the human realm was under his control, but the cultivators of the human realm had been reduced to murder machines. He stepped forward, walking toward the human realm, and stood under that sky. At present, all of the 7 realms were under the other's influence. If the human ancestor did not die, the conflicts would never be resolved. The tribulations of the 7 realms would continue, and people would continuously die. Another figure appeared on the battlefield of the gods. The figure wore a simple robe, but there was an aggressive aura about him. His gaze swept towards the sky of the human realm and then scanned the entire battlefield. There was a layer of contempt in his eyes. This new figure was the Devil Emperor. You came just in time. Kill him now. I will help you. The voice streamed out of the sky above the human realm. The Devil Emperor looked toward Yi Futian. Yi Futian was also looking at him and called out, "Senior, please keep reading on OIB0XN0. He did not say anything else. This battle was a battle of the gods. The ancient gods and the great emperors of this era had all appeared here. Since the Devil Emperor came, he naturally had made his own decision and choice as well. He wanted to know if the Devil Emperor's choice was like the evil emperor or if he would choose another path. Yi Futian was waiting for an answer. Then monstrous demonic might flared from the Devil Emperor's body. His aura was extremely horrifying. He was like the body of tribulations. Countless beams of tribulation light flowed across his body, containing immense destructive power. He reached a hand out, and a devil sword appeared instantly. Wielding the devil sword, the Devil Emperor cut down in one direction. The sword cut apart the void and hacked down somewhere. There was a battlefield there. On it, U2 was currently fighting against a great emperor. Just at that time, the frightening devil sword arrived in a flash. The expression of the opponent in front of U2 was shocked. He wanted to block it, but his divine power shield was hacked apart. The devil sword came down and killed him directly. A great emperor had been killed by one strike of a sword. U2 turned and looked at the Devil Emperor standing in the sky. There was a rare smile on his face as he said, "Brother, us two brothers have not fought together in how many years?" There was some feeling of closure in his smile right now. Even though he had always believed that he had chosen the correct path and did not regret it, he was still the traitor. This was not just an accusation toward him by the Devil Emperor. He had truly betrayed them. The Devil World was the prison of the ancient heavenly path. It was the absolute opposite of the Heaven Court, Heavenly Emperor, and the later Divine Prefecture. They had always been enemies. All cultivators of the Devil World spent their lives trying to use their own efforts to lead the army of the Devil World out. He had abandoned the Devil World without a doubt and stepped onto another path. Thus, he had always carried heavy guilt on his shoulders. The Devil Emperor looked at U2 and said, "I didn't do this for you." "I know," U2 replied, not minding. The Devil Emperor's gaze swept toward the sky of the human realm and said, "The cultivators of the Devil World will not become slaves." He knew that if the Devil World chose to submit, they would forever be the subordinates of the human realm. If they were not obedient, they might be destroyed. What was the difference between that and the Heavenly Path era? For countless years, they had carried the status of prisoners. They wanted even less to carry the status of slaves after this. Please keep reading on OIB0XN0. The human ancestor had threatened him with the lives of everyone in the Devil World, and this had already crossed his bottom line. Thus, he would rather stand on Yi Futian's side. "Donghuang, Yi Futian," the Devil Emperor announced. "I have already ordered for the Devil World army to cease fire against the Divine Prefecture. If we are defeated here today, I hope that the world can view the cultivators of the Devil World without discrimination. Being defeated may mean death. If he died, he hoped that the cultivators of the Devil World could live in this world." "Senior, do not worry," Yi Futian stated. "Furthermore, if we are defeated, I might be like you and not be able to see the future. This battle was all or nothing. If they lost, they might all die. They would not be able to see anything. It would definitely be an age of darkness." "All right." The Devil Emperor nodded. The Buddha of Destiny had predicted that he would encounter a tribulation. If today was his tribulation, he hoped that the cultivators of the Devil World would be unscathed and that they would be free of the Devil Abyss's restrictions. Even if there was no Devil World in the future, even if everyone in the future forgot the will of the Devil World, it was no longer important. The Devil Emperor stepped forward, walking toward one direction, and joined the battlefield. After the Devil Emperor joined the battle, all 6 emperors were now present. They all participated in the fight. This battle gathered all the top figures. If one had to name someone missing, then it was only Ji Wudao who was temporarily locked away by the current Heavenly Emperor. In Donghuang the Great's battlefield, he and the Eternal Sword Lord were still in a stalemate. After seeing that the Devil Emperor had come to join the battle, Donghuang the Great felt gratuitous. The 6 emperors had fought for countless years, checking and balancing each other, but he always knew who his opponent was. He had never viewed the devil world as his enemy and respected the devil emperor deep down. Now, they finally had the chance to fight side by side. 4 of the 6 emperors were on their side. Even the Dark Sovereign was now standing against the human ancestor. Aggressive sword chi suddenly appeared, but Donghuang the Great did not avoid it. The revelation divine power seemed to evolve at this moment. The murderous sword intent filling the sky scattered and became formless, turning into nothingness. No sword intent could approach his body. This domain of nothingness was also expanding and shrouding toward the eternal sword lord. Donghuang, a voice rang out. Then the eternal sword lord's body was already gone. He had transformed into the divine domain of the sword path, becoming one with all the heavens. His huge silhouette appeared in the dome of the sky, formed by countless sword intents. These sword intents seemed to be immortal, eternally existing in the world. Donghuang, a voice rang out. Then the eternal sword lord's body was already gone. He had transformed into the divine domain of the sword path, becoming one with all the heavens. His huge silhouette appeared in the dome of the sky, formed by countless sword intents. These sword intents seemed to be immortal, eternally existing in the world. Merely his voice contained an extremely sharp aura. There were sharp, ear-piercing sounds. The vast void was formed by the eternal sword intent. Every beam of sword intent was extremely strong. This micro-world was the world of the sword. Donghuang the Great raised his head and looked at the eternal sword lord. He sensed an extremely strong threat. This micro-world contained billions of sword intent. I cultivated the sword path and ruled the world. I did not think I would meet my match in the later world. You won my respect. This sword is the eternal sword. If you can take it, then this battle will be over, the eternal sword lord said. His voice was extremely domineering. The revelation divine power from Donghuang the Great shrouded the vast space. The endless sword intent invaded it without resistance, but they could not hurt him at all. Then divine power surged on Donghuang the Great. Divine light enveloped his body, and he looked brilliant. Emperor light wrapped around him, filled with an air of mightiness. He looked up at the eternal sword lord and said, "I respect you as an ancient senior. It's not too late for you to give up now." Presumptuous, the eternal sword lord barked. Then he stated loudly, "Of the 3,000 great paths, only the sword is eternal." As soon as he spoke, all the divine swords seemed to solidify, becoming able to obliterate every single existence. Everything in that sword domain was about to turn into dust and ashes, dying under the sword. Billions of divine swords in the dome of the sky converged into an eternal sword that could cross over the world. It stabbed down and it seemed very slow, but it crossed the vast void in every second. The two were fighting at a large distance between each other. Donghuang the Great sensed the sword might. The worlds in its path collapsed, and space shattered. Everything was turning to dust under this sword. In the dome of the sky, the eternal sword lord's face was boundlessly huge. Sword light wrapped around him and illuminated the heavens. At that moment, many cultivators on the continents of the heaven realm could all see a highly brilliant arc of sword light in the sky. The revelation divine power was collapsing and shattering. It could not hold up against the sword intent at all. That divine sword killed its way over, shooting toward Donghuang the Great. Right then, Donghuang the Great's body transformed into illusory light, as if he was not genuinely tangible. But the divine light on his body was even more brilliant than earlier. His 2 hands formed an imprint, and he pointed his finger forward, uttering from his lips, "Become nothing." As soon as he spoke, his body moved forward. His finger transformed into a sword that went upward. The frightening eternal sword intent fell from the sky, but it crumbled in an instant, turning into nothingness. That was not all. Everything under the path of Donghuang the Great's finger was obliterated, turning into nothingness. After that, everything surrounding his body also turned into nothingness. No type of divine power could survive. The world-slaying eternal sword shot down from the dome of the sky, killing toward Donghuang the Great with an extremely aggressive force. It was as if Dong Huang the Great's body would be stabbed through instantly and killed right then and there. But Dong Huang the Great did not retreat at all. He continued forward, his finger clashing against the extremely domineering eternal sword. It looked like a moth trying to move a tree. There was no intense explosion. There was only annihilation and nothingness. The eternal sword was actually penetrated by Dong Huang the Great's finger. Then it broke bit by bit, turning into nothingness. The boundlessly huge sword was dissolved as if it had never existed. This scene made the expression of the eternal sword lord, who had become one with the sky and the heavens, change drastically. Dong Huang the Great continued upward. His finger pointed before him and landed on the massive face of the eternal sword lord, breaking the sky with a finger. At that moment, the sky was shattering and turning into nothingness. The eternal sword lord's face was twisting. Some sword intent wanted to escape and leave, but under that divine power of the void, no type of chi was able to go. Everything turned into the void. In that instant, everything was shattering. The eternal sword lord's face disappeared. That sword domain also shattered, transforming into nothingness. Dong Huang the Great stood atop the void. His body re-solidified, but his aura was a bit weaker. He consumed a pill and then sat cross-legged, closing his eyes to cultivate. On the other battlefields, the Devil Emperor began sweeping in all directions after joining the battle. The 6 emperors were the top figures of the world. Even the ancient great emperors found it difficult to counter them. Only those super great emperors could put up a fight. At this time, the Devil Emperor and you too already had the blood of a dozen ancient great emperors on their hands. The Devil Emperor's goal turned to the Evil Emperor, who was fighting against the Dark Sovereign. If they killed the Evil Emperor, the result of this battle would be set. Meanwhile, you two charged towards another battlefield. Of course, the most dangerous one was still the human ancestor, who had transformed into the heavenly path. Please keep reading 0 and IB0XN0VL. Calm Yi Futian stood under the heavenly path of the human ancestor and saw an extremely frightening force shroud the vast space. Then Yi Futian discovered with shock that countless air currents rushed towards that part of the sky. At that moment, the entire human realm sank into a mass of moans and cries. All of the cultivators in the human realm seemed to be out of control, but that was not all. Even the people from all over who were fighting there were the same. The human ancestor had refined the human realm. Was he swallowing the energy of the entire human realm? Was he going to use all the cultivators of the human realm? What is that? Yi Futian stared at the upper sky. He saw countless illusory shadows. They were like various obsessions or emotions and desires. Many shadows were struggling, but it was to no avail. They all converged atop the sky. Justice? This was the human ancestor's justice, his path. Were all the cultivators of the human realm his puppets? I must stop him. This thought appeared in Yi Futian's mind. He realized that the most dangerous human ancestor was about to come into the world. With one thought, divine light appeared around Yi Futian's body, filling the sky. Strange phenomena and countless divine swords appeared. He pointed at the sky, and the billions of divine swords broke through at once, shooting towards that part of the sky. A patch of sword rain appeared in the sky, shooting towards that part of the heavenly path. The converged force kept getting extinguished, and yet Yi Futian heard a mocking voice come from the heavens. Don't you call yourself the side of justice? Why are you committing bloodshed now? Yi Futian's pupils constricted. Were the illusions that he was extinguishing real cultivators? This is your justice? Yi Futian stared at the illusory face in the sky. After I control the heavenly path and create a world of gods, there will be absolute justice, the human ancestor replied. The heavenly emperor could not stop me back then. Your mother could not stop me either. Today you will be the same. The entire heavens turned into an illusory face. All of the gods that were fighting looked up towards there as well. Their hearts pounded. Was the true human ancestor coming? In many continents of the human realm, the trees were withering, and the rivers and lakes were drying up. Everything in the world was being destroyed. The people of the human realm all sank into endless despair. They looked up to the heavens. Was that their world's savior? In many continents of the human realm, the trees were withering and the rivers and lakes were drying up. Everything in the world was being destroyed. The people of the human realm all sank into endless despair. They looked up to the heavens. Was that their world's savior? Why was he now bringing doomsday to the human realm instead? The human ancestor was refining all the energy of the human realm. The yin and yang, the 5 elements, and everything were melded into the heavenly path. On the battlefield, Futian and the others looked up to the sky. They sensed the might of the doomsday. The energy contained in that heavenly path already surpassed a great emperor. He was refining an entire world. Many people stopped fighting. Even the evil emperor stopped his battle and instead looked up at that sky. Everyone felt coldness deep in their bones. The human ancestor's humanity was already gone, or rather, he was not a human anymore. He already viewed himself as a god of creation. After countless years of cultivation, I have realized the ultimate path. Everything in the world follows the law of conservation. This was the reason why the heavenly path collapsed back then. If the gods want to rise, then the heavenly path must be destroyed, the voice streamed from the heavens. However, they were still defeated in the end. Success was impossible. Nowadays, the world that has been in chaos for countless years will finally return to order. Everything will return to the correct path. The way to return to the correct path is through bloodshed? The evil emperor asked, looking at the heavens. He was shocked by everything that he saw the human ancestor do. All of this was too horrifying. If this continued, he could not imagine what the world would turn into. Since the world follows the law of conservation, then to create an era of gods, there can't be too many humans. There seemed to be a pair of eyes in the sky that looked at the evil emperor. What? Do you want to betray me too? Everything you're doing is incomprehensible, the evil emperor said. He had wanted to follow the strong side, which was the human ancestor. Everything had been decided already, but at this moment, he started feeling belated fear. If the human ancestor achieved his ideal world, what would it be like? I spent countless years and ages to comprehend the ultimate path. It is very typical for you not to be able to comprehend it. I do not need you to understand either, the human ancestor said. I am known as the human ancestor. Thus, I will reshape the world order today. The human ancestor, the ancestor of humankind. After he reshaped the world order, he would be the first ancestor of the new world's humans. There would be generation after generation with no end. Boom! Beams of divine light dropped down, falling onto everyone's bodies. At that moment, all the cultivators felt their consciousnesses and minds become muddled. It was like a horrifying intent was trying to invade them and take over their bodies directly. Even Futian felt this horrifying strength. In his mind, he saw a boundless and domineering face invading with the might of the heavenly path. Beams of frightening divine power burst forth. Divine power flared crazily from the ancient figures whom the human ancestor had revived and brought back. Their eyes became extremely demonic as if they were no longer themselves. They released divine power crazily as they attacked the fighters. Turns out the ancient emperors being revived was all a sham. They're all puppets controlled by the human ancestor. Everyone understood now after seeing this scene. Futian broke free from the state and he yelled, "Careful." This voice reverberated in everyone's eardrums like a ringing bell. It helped everyone maintain clarity in their minds, but even so, several great emperors around them still suffered from the sudden attack. At this time, strong divine power enveloped the vast space, covering all the cultivators. It was Huajiyu's divine power of colorless realm. All the strong figures bathed in the divine power of colorless realm and blocked off the invasion of that intent. Just then there was a crisp sound. Futian looked back toward a certain direction, and he saw that in that place, shock appeared in the evil emperor's eyes. There was a golden spear in his body. The horrifying spatial divine power was distorting the space. This is the consequence of betraying. A voice came from the silhouette. Then the space twisted and shattered wildly. The evil emperor's body exploded directly, turning into nothingness in the distorted space windstorm. He was killed directly. Human ancestor. Everyone's hearts pounded. The Devil Emperor and Dark Sovereign looked at the figure who had killed the evil emperor. It was an ancient emperor, but right now, he had become the clone of the human ancestor. He was a puppet. The human ancestor could come to the world by using them. This had already been proven. The human ancestor that Yi Futian had killed earlier was exactly like this. However, coming to this world by using the body of a puppet made the human ancestor even more frightening. As one of the 6 emperors, the evil emperor had been one of the most supreme beings, but he had been killed directly. It was also with the spatial power that he himself had been skilled at. The human ancestor had truly touched the source of all. Just as he said, he was a god of creation. Divine power was no longer necessary because he represented the law. Please keep reading 0 and IB0XN0VL. Calm Yi Futian trained his eyes on that side. Extremely powerful divine power descended instantly, shrouding the other's body. The evil emperor had shown the responsibility as one of the 6 emperors by realizing the end, but he was killed so quickly because of this. That figure stared at Yi Futian with disdain and mockery in his eyes. Boom! Yi Futian's body vanished from the spot. He stabbed his spear out unwaveringly. Time came to a stop. The other was unmoving. The spear penetrated the other's body directly, and he was annihilated instantly, killed instantly. However, Yi Futian did not relax at all. This was only a clone, while the human ancestor could descend at will, appearing anywhere. Those ancient emperors were all his puppets and could all become his incarnates. This even made Yi Futian feel fear. Who could stop the human ancestor, other than him? If the human ancestor's incarnates killed the others, who would be able to stop him? Thinking of this, Yi Futian's divine power instantly shrouded the vast space, covering all the battlefields with his divine thought. He sensed a commotion in one direction, and his expression changed with shock. With a thought, he pushed his divine power to the max. Everything seemed to stop, but a frightening figure was still shooting toward Huajiyu. Huajiyu had released the divine power of colorless realm, attracting the human ancestor's attention, and thus became the target that the human ancestor wanted to kill the most. Boom! In that space, Yi Futian's speed reached his maximum limit, moving like a shooting star. The attack missed. It stabbed into where Huajiyu had been standing, but Huajiyu's body had disappeared. She was standing at another point with Yi Futian. Yi Futian's heart pounded, feeling the aftershock. He trained his eyes on the figure in the lower sky. If he had been an instant slower, Huajiyu might have died in the hands of the human ancestor. Even now, everyone was still in danger. All of you come back, Yi Futian announced loudly, calling for all the fighters to return to his side. All of you come back, Yi Futian announced loudly, calling for all the fighters to return to his side. At the same time, his divine power enveloped the vast space, raising his guard against the other. It is meaningless. The voice traveled from the dome of the sky, and a face appeared in the heavenly path. Then limitless divine light shone down. It converged in one place. There, a humanoid figure gradually appeared. This figure did not seem real. It was an incredibly perfect person. Every part of the body was translucent. It was carved from the heavenly path and had no flaws. I gave you all chances, but since you did not treasure it, you will disappear now. Become a part of the world, the human ancestor said. He did not believe in gods and did not believe in any person. He only believed in himself. It was only absolutely real if everything was grasped in his own hands. Even if he created a world of gods, he still wanted to control all the gods. Everything in the world had to operate under his wishes. The perfect figure that had appeared bathed under the divine light of the heavenly path. He lowered his head and gazed at Yi Futian. His eyes were extremely frightening. It was like he could enter Yi Futian's mind with only one glance and rob his control over his body. The other's figure was projected in Yi Futian's mind. He seemed to see the sky and also all the organisms. It was the entire human realm. The human ancestor was no longer a pure, human cultivator. He was a different species. Surrender, the human ancestor said. His voice shook the world. Yi Futian showed signs of lowering his head to bow down to the other. This was a supreme intent, the intent of the heavenly path. This is my world. A thought appeared in Yi Futian's mind. He locked the other's intent in his world and then destroyed it. However, at practically the same time, an extremely dangerous aura descended. The human ancestor attacked while holding the sword of law. It contained extremely frightening divine power. Everything in the world was about to be destroyed. Yi Futian looked up at the other. Everything in the surrounding world froze. All the divine power stopped flowing. However, he could not stop the other's actions. The human ancestor's body was still descending. Even the divine power of law of time could not block his sword. His law of sword surpassed that of time and could shatter the time and space here directly. The divine power of time did not have a form, but even so, Yi Futian could still clearly feel that time was collapsing. Yi Futian tightened his grasp on the spear. When one reached the level that he and the human ancestor were at, everything returned to the basics. Those brilliant divine techniques all lost their meaning. It was a clash of the most primitive forces. Boom! His body transformed into the path and advanced. His spear broke through the air. This spear seemed to carry the force of a universe gathered on the spear. It could shatter every physical item in the universe. If it hit a world, it could be destroyed directly. And at that moment, there was only one figure before them. Continue reading on IB0XN0. The instant that two streaks of light shot out, everything in the surroundings went still. Even the two streaks seemed like simple attacks. Everyone sensed how frightening the one blow was. It was like time was suffering formless restrictions, and they could not move. The human ancestor and Yi Futian were all above their levels. Finally, the two attacks crashed into each other. It felt like a long time had passed. There was no intense explosion. This collision was already above the law of time and had also surpassed sound. Everyone felt the absolute stillness. They could hear their own heartbeats. After that, the entire world in that area collapsed and shattered. It crumbled into nothingness in that instant. Everything no longer existed. The strong figures of the great emperor plane nearby all retreated quickly, releasing their divine power wildly to fend off the corrosion from that destructive force. But despite this, some people were still heavily injured. Yi Futian was in the center of the battlefield. He felt the world inside his body collapsing and shattering. Many buildings in his micro-heavenly path world were collapsing, cracks appeared in the mountains, and the sea was roaring. It was like experiencing a tribulation. His body was forced to an extremely faraway place, and he let out a muffled grunt from his lips. The space around him had already crumbled and turned into nothingness. The perfect body that the human ancestor had formed also shattered, turning illusory. However, as divine light shone down from the heavens, that broken figure reformed and was reborn. It seemed to be eternal and undying. Boom! Right then, a beam of extremely aggressive sword light hacked down, cracking the world. It cut down at the heavenly path. Billions of devil tribulations were released with the sword light, ripping through every existence. It was about to rip apart and destroy that part of the sky. This was done by the devil emperor. In ancient times, the heavenly path had managed the world law and had a consciousness. The human ancestor had cultivated in ancient times, and now he had become the heavenly path. In that case, killing his incarnate was no longer meaningful. They could only kill the human ancestor by shattering the heavens, like in ancient times. The human ancestor turned and looked at the devil emperor. Scorn flashed past his eyes. Suddenly, countless beams of tribulation light dropped from the heavenly path, shooting murderously toward the devil emperor. At the same time, the huge face stared at the devil emperor, invading the devil emperor's mind. The devil emperor's body was frozen there, but his eyes continued bursting with a really shocking demonic light. His body had turned into a tribulation form, and he uttered devilish sounds that circled up in the sky. Abruptly, light from billions of demonic tribulations swept up the heavens, wanting to cut apart that heavenly path. At that moment, the cultivators in the lower skies saw limitless tribulation light pass through the sky and ravage crazily in the sky. Suicide, the perfect incarnation of the human ancestor, uttered. The next moment, his body vanished. A sword of law stabbed through the Devil Emperor's body directly. The strength of the tribulation light weakened immediately, and the Devil Emperor's magnificent body started breaking apart. Bang! The Devil Emperor's body transformed into nothingness and flew into the distance. The human ancestor gazed at the side coldly. However, a moment later, the Devil Emperor's broken body rematerialized. A beam of divine light wrapped around his body so he would not die. Go! Yi Futian cried out. The human ancestor did not plan on letting him go. Another beam of world-slaying light dropped from the sky, transforming into the spear of destruction. It was like the Dark Sovereign's ability. It could penetrate the Emperor directly and pierced the Devil Emperor's body. But at the same time, a silhouette escaped and left. There was a huge boom and the Devil Emperor's physical body shattered, but his divine soul was not extinguished. Instead, it turned and escaped. The human ancestor wanted to continue killing it, but Yi Futian blocked him. He raised a palm. Golden light wrapped around him and pushed up the sky, blocking that attack. Everyone felt a bit of despair. The human ancestor had returned as the path. He was undying and it was impossible to kill him. In the distance, Lady Qin and Lady Shu at Donghuang the Great, but Donghuang the Great shook his head at them. It's effective. It's effective. Yi Futian looked up at the heavenly path. Back when the heavenly path had collapsed in the ancient war of gods, it had meant that the heavenly path was not undefeatable. The human ancestor was not either. The Devil Emperor's previous attack had been effective, and it caused the human ancestor to grow furious. However, the Devil Emperor had also paid a heavy price. He had used 2 lives in exchange for having his spirit soul escape. You are all looking for death, a cold voice sounded from the dome of the sky. Then doomsday divine tribulations descended from the sky. Beams of the destructive divine light of law shone down, shooting toward Yi Futian and the other emperors. Then Yi Futian's body flashed, going up to the sky. An extremely frightening beam of divine light shot from his body and crossed the sky, piercing into the heavens. Instantly, it was as if the flow of time in the heavens slowed down. Then the space began distorting and collapsing. Yi Futian's body transformed into a beam of light and went upward. The beam of light crossed over the sky in an extremely brilliant manner. Holding the spear, he stabbed into the heavens. The glow of the spear penetrated it, seeming to spear the heavens. The space inside collapsed and shattered, suffering from extreme destructiveness. At that moment, the sky of the human realm also collapsed and shattered crazily, but a frightening silhouette appeared. It stared at Yi Futian. "Let us end now," that silhouette said. As soon as he spoke, countless beams of the divine light of law fell, hitting Yi Futian's body. At that moment, Yi Futian could only feel supreme energy going through his body, penetrating his spirit soul. No one could endure the impact of this terrifying energy. The world inside Yi Futian's body was collapsing and breaking crazily. He spat out fresh blood, and his body was forced to an extremely faraway place. His physical body was about to collapse, and his spirit soul was breaking and extinguishing too. It was like his entire being was disintegrating and would soon stop existing. Bang! With a loud bang, Yi Futian's body was shaken apart. This scene shocked Donghuang the Great and the others. Their eyes stared in Yi Futian's direction, and many people had hopeless expressions. Had Yi Futian been by the human ancestor? Umph! A cold huff came from the heavens. That heavenly path had been damaged too. He had only returned after waiting for centuries and did not think that someone could pose a threat to him today. The destructive force of the law converged. He was going to kill everyone. Ha! At that time, many people gaped and looked towards Yi Futian's side. They watched as Yi Futian's broken spirit soul actually started rejoining. His physical body was converging and reforming as if he also had an undying body. Continue under screening on YB0XN0VL. Calm. This made the human ancestor let out a surprised noise. Then another gust of extremely frightening energy started gathering. He wanted to kill Yi Futian again. Donghuang the Great looked at Yi Futian and his body transformed into a blinding streak of light. He rushed toward the heavenly path. After he entered it, his entire person turned illusory. A mighty divine power spread out. It was the power of the void. Transform, Dong Huang the Great uttered. His body became the path, and everything surrounding him turned into nothingness. That part of the heaven kept dissipating as if it would be eradicated and disappear under the divine power of Dong Huang the Great until it no longer existed. Father! Yi Futian looked up to the dome of the sky, his heart twisting painfully. His father had always wanted to comprehend the ultimate divine power. The void was indeed one of the top divine powers. It could make everything turn into nothingness. But Yi Futian felt vaguely that even though his father had comprehended the path of the void, it was still not enough. He was not strong enough to destroy that heavenly path. The human ancestor had transformed the path for countless years, and there was still a big difference. His attack earlier with the path of time had also been extreme, and he believed that in terms of force, it was an ultimate force too. It could make time and space collapse, but it still could not kill the human ancestor. Hua Jiu also moved toward the dome of the sky. Her dress fluttered as she released the divine power of the colorless realm to the max. It seeped into that part of the sky, wanting to lock up the human ancestor. The Dark Sovereign also attacked. The light of doomsday burst from her body, shooting toward the sky. Everyone was unleashing their strongest attacks to destroy the heavenly path. That part of the heavens collapsed and shattered crazily. Chaotic law and order rained down, and destructive currents went wild in the sky. You think this will work? The cold voice said from the heavens, making everyone feel chills over their body. Countless beams of destructive light penetrated the body of Dong Huang the Great. Under the blow of the horrifying energy, even the divine power of the void lost effectiveness. Dong Huang the Great's body was destroyed and disappeared. He died in the dome of the sky. The others who had attacked suffered extremely terrifying blows and were sent flying back, even getting heavily hurt. History will not repeat. An extremely cold voice streamed from the heavens. That frightening face was extremely cold, thinking back to the past two experiences. This time, he used the lessons he had learned and did not panic. He was stronger than any previous times, returning in whole and without flaws. He was perfect and had become the true heavenly path. He was undying and unkillable. No one could ever defeat him again. Even so, he still encountered quite some trouble. This made him feel blasphemed. However, everything was about to end. He was the ultimate god. Father! Yi Futian looked at the disappeared figure of Dong Huang the Great. After comprehending the ultimate path of the void, his father had transformed into the path to destroy the human ancestor, but he had still failed. Your Majesty! The string emperor and book deity also looked toward the vanished figure. After their master had passed away, had Dong Huang the Great passed away too? Then, who could stop the human ancestor? Destructive doomsday might radiate out of the heavens. The human ancestor would not give them the chance to lament. He wanted to kill everyone. Beams of divine light shot down murderously, going towards Yi Futian and the others, and were about to hit their targets. But just then, a formless force swept across, and the entire world seemed to freeze at that moment. Even the human ancestor's attacks seemed to stop. Yi Futian felt that an invisible force shrouded the entire world at that moment. He could vaguely sense golden light, but that was illusory and not real. This is time. That idea flashed through Yi Futian's mind. Who is it? Futian. At that time, a voice spoke, and in Yi Futian's perceptions, he saw a figure. Master. The figure in Yi Futian's perceptions was his teacher. The human ancestor has already become the path. He is undefeatable by human force. If you wish to defeat him, there is only one path, the master said to Yi Futian. Please advise me, Yi Futian said. Become the path, the master replied. Become the path. Yi Futian murmured. Master, have you become the path already? I have always been imprisoned in time. Not long ago, I finally had some enlightenment. I can help you trap him for some time, but the specifics of what to do depends on yourself. Who are you? A cold voice streamed from the dome of the sky. Incredible destructive force exploded, but it had no target. Everything was in a formless state. Who are you? A cold voice streamed from the dome of the sky. Incredible destructive force exploded, but it had no target. Everything was in a formless state. The human ancestor smelted the world and turned his body into the heavenly path. He controlled all of the material energy and comprehended the force of the original source. He himself represented the law. He was undying and unable to be killed. But at this moment he was trapped in the formlessness. I came from that era, just like you, the voice replied. Time. The human ancestor had never paid attention to the teacher of the Four Corners village. To him, he was just an ancient emperor and not even a complete body. He had collected too many ancient emperors like him. It was not surprising that Dong Huang the Great could meet one. He had not cared at all. As the human ancestor, he was already standing at the pinnacle of the world and had become the path. Indeed, he did not need to care, but he had never expected that the existence he had overlooked was now restraining him. You are the time walker Mu Feng. The human ancestor's voice was filled with shock. It seems that you are very knowledgeable about the ancient great emperors, the master replied. Back then, the collapse of the heavenly path already put the world through tribulations. I am sure that you were a victim too. Since you already reached this cultivation state, why are you repeating it? The human ancestor did not answer. Instead, he said, Why did you not die? All the gods had died under the heavenly path. The Time Walker had also been a super great emperor. How come he had not died and still lived until today's world? I was trapped in time and survived with luck, the master said. Since you could also become the path and return today, why are you taking the other side? The human ancestor's voice was cold and carried a threatening feeling. After the heavenly path collapsed, the world experienced tribulations of doomsday. After countless years, it is time for a new era, and it is not the era you want, the master continued to say. Everyone could hear their conversation clearly. They could even feel the destructive windstorm that the human ancestor released, but it could not threaten them. That force seemed to be existing in a different dimension than them. Master has a deeper understanding of time than me, Yi Futian thought inside. If he were to defeat the human ancestor, he would have to become the path. His father had become the path of the void but still could not kill the human ancestor. Master seemed to have become the path now too. Then how should he become the path? Young master, a voice said. The string emperor walked towards Yi Futian. Continue reading, on MIB 0xN0 view. Come, Lady Qin, Lady Shu. Yi Futian looked at the two. The string emperor seemed to have something to say to him. Actually, your mother knew back then that if she wanted to kill the human ancestor, she could only be like him, but if you become the path, you will no longer be yourself. You will only be the path. Lady Qin looked at Yi Futian. She seemed to be pained as she spoke. Yi Futian understood instantly. Back then, the 8 legions under the heavenly path controlled the law of the world, but the heavenly path was only the law. It did not have a true form. The human ancestor was the same. After he became the path, he no longer truly existed. Only his consciousness existed. After his mother became the heavenly path, she disappeared and stopped existing. So if he became the path, young master, with your current cultivation, you might be able to reach the supreme level even without becoming the path and surpass the human ancestor, the string emperor continued to say. You already created the heavenly path world, and you're practically undying and immortal. You can travel across universes. Leave here and cultivate in another world. You can return and kill the human ancestor in the future. Yi Futian seemed to understand something from her words and asked, Did father know this too? The string emperor's eyes dulled, and then she nodded. Your father was like your mother, the string emperor said. They both had very resolute beliefs. They wanted to return to the glory of the ancient era and let everyone have an unrestricted cultivation world. They had worked hard for that too, but after losing your mother, you were the only one that your father had. Thus he always felt that he owed you. As long as there is a shred of hope, he would not want you to sacrifice yourself for this ideal. So he chose to use himself as a gambling chip? Yi Futian looked up to the dome of the sky and said, Because of me, his resolute faith started swaying. Perhaps that is the only time he swayed, the string emperor said. He hoped you could live. Naturally, Yi Futian understood. If he lived to leave in defeat from today's battle, the world would undergo tribulations and suffer world-ending disasters. Even so, Dong Huang the Great had chosen to keep it from him, not telling him. Perhaps, this was Dong Huang the Great's selfishness as a father. Yi Futian lowered his head and looked down. His eyes seemed to penetrate the vast world. He saw the tribulations of the human realm and the heaven realm. All of the 7 realms were going through tribulations. And this was only the beginning. If the human ancestor ruled over the world, he would destroy everything, upend everything. He wanted to create a world of gods, but they had to be gods that he controlled. He wanted to become the absolute ruler. I know what to do now, Yi Futian said. He raised his head and looked toward the human ancestor with extremely resolute eyes. Even if this battle were not for the masses, it would be for his grandfather whom he had never met, his mother who had died to give birth to him, his father Dong Huang the Great, the Devil Emperor, and others. He could not let the human ancestor remain in this world. He could bring the people around him and escape freely, leaving this world, but who would take revenge for all this? Countless people from the 6 legions had died in this battle, including those from the Ziwei Imperial Palace and those under the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Who would take revenge for their lives? These people had fought for their faith. Some had also fought for him. He was their faith. Countless eyes fell upon Yi Futian's body. Hua Jiu, Gu Dong Lu Yuwuchen? All of these familiar faces. They had heard the previous conversation and knew what was going to happen, but no one spoke. No one was qualified to decide for Yi Futian. This was his destiny. Turning around, Yi Futian did not meet those pairs of eyes. He was afraid that he would hesitate. With one thought, his body vanished from the spot and left this place. Seeing him leave, this part of the heavens was deathly silent. Even if I become the path, I will still exist, won't I? A voice sounded, landing in everyone's ears. It was comforting them all. This voice penetrated their hearts, and tears appeared in many people's eyes. Dong Huangdian stood on the side and looked toward the disappeared figure. There were tears in her pretty eyes. Her second father had died in battle too. She had learned of Yi Futian from a very young age, and she had met Yi Futian when she was 16 years old. Even though Yi Futian did not know her identity, he had always existed in her life. Was everyone in her life going to leave her? Dian. The String Emperor and Book Deity walked to Dong Huangdian's side, comforting her softly. To them, Dong Huangdian was also their child, just like Yi Futian. The strong figures in the Devil Imperial Palace of the Devil World saw the figure that had floated over and felt immense pain in their hearts. The strong figures in the Devil Imperial Palace of the Devil World saw the figure that had floated over and felt immense pain in their hearts. Your Majesty, they called out, only to hear the Devil Emperor say, from today on, Yu Xing will inherit the position of the Devil World's Devil Emperor. All strong figures of the Devil World must obey the orders of the new Emperor. The solemn voice resonated throughout the dome of the sky. All the devil cultivators of the Devil World knelt onto the ground and cried out loudly, Your Majesty the Devil Emperor. The Devil Emperor looked at all those figures. Then he turned around and walked toward the Devil Abyss. His backside was filled with bleakness. After entering the Devil Abyss, he went straight to the center of the Devil Abyss. He had been carrying the responsibility of the Devil Abyss for all these years, and today he could finally be freed. His body turned illusory, but it also expanded, becoming larger and larger. The boundlessly huge figure melded into the Devil Abyss, becoming one with the tribulations of the Devil Abyss. Yu Xing, who was currently cultivating in the Devil Abyss, seemed to sense something. His dark eyes opened. Then Yu Xing saw the entire Devil Abyss seem to transform into a face, the face of the Devil Emperor. Yu Xing, the Devil Emperor's voice traveled into his mind. Back then, the Devil Abyss had been a force equal to the heavenly path. Similarly, it also contains its own consciousness. However, it lost in the right against the heavenly path and was reduced to a prison. It nurtured the demonic lord and helped the Devil Abyss fight against the heavenly path. Countless years have passed, and I am still unable to control the power of the Devil Abyss. You absorbed the intent of the demonic lord and can already resonate with the devil abyss. Today, I will help you. After melding into the devil abyss, I will become a shred of the devil abyss's consciousness. I hope you can control the devil abyss, just like the demonic lord, and help the people of the devil world to stop suffering the hardships of the devil abyss. Instead, they can use it for their cultivation. Hearing the devil emperor's words, Yu Sheng's expression suddenly changed. I can control the devil abyss without you, he said. There is no time, the devil emperor said. As he spoke, his body became more and more illusory, as if it could disappear at any moment. Uncle! Yu Sheng cried, standing up. I do not agree. When he spoke, the entire devil abyss trembled, his voice resounding throughout. This is my destiny. For countless years, I have always been enduring the pain of the devil abyss, and it's time for me to be freed, the devil emperor said. Yu Sheng, I have never pleaded to anyone in my life, but I must ask something of you. Yu Sheng's heart twisted as he looked at that face. For countless years, the cultivators of the devil world have always carried the shameful status of prisoners. However, the masses of the devil world are all strong and righteous people. Your father had his own beliefs. I do not blame him for his choice, but he made the mistake of bowing down to the others and bending his spine. Please reading, on IB0XN Oval. The devil emperor continued. Not long ago, the human ancestor used the devil world to threaten me into participating in the battle. I was forced to join in, but the devil world will never surrender. Thus, I finally chose to fight against the human ancestor. I do not regret it. This was not for all the beings in the world because the world has nothing to do with me. Similarly, it's not for your father and the others. Instead, it is for the devil world. Next, the human ancestor and Yi Futian will have an ultimate duel. If you can manage the devil abyss, you should also take part. If you are defeated, then you will die in battle. If you succeed, the devil world will be equal to them and create a new world together. What I ask of you is to never submit under another person. You are the kind of the devil world. Yu Sheng's eyes reddened. He was a true man, but he still grew tearful. The devil emperor had never pleaded to anyone in his life, but he was asking him to be the devil world's king. He could die in battle, but he should never surrender. The devil world had been known as prisoners for countless years. The devil emperor did not wish for the devil world to continue being the lower caste in the future and be submissive to others. If the king of the devil world bowed his head, then the cultivators of the devil world would not be able to raise their heads. Thus, the devil emperor had fought against the human ancestor, and he asked Yu Sheng to fight the human ancestor. He wanted the devil world to stand upright and legitimately in the world. If they were to create a new world, the devil world should be equal to the others as well. Yu Sheng naturally understood that the devil emperor was talking about Yi Futian. The devil emperor asked this of him because he was clear about their relationship. I promise, Yu Sheng said solemnly. The devil emperor did not stop him from fighting alongside Yi Futian. He only had one request, for the king of the devil world to never submit to someone else. The devil world is yours now. After the devil emperor spoke, his body disappeared gradually, melding completely into the devil abyss. Horrifying demonic tribulations ravaged inside the devil abyss. There was no trace of the devil emperor anymore. But Yu Sheng could feel that the devil emperor was still here, guarding him and the devil world with the devil abyss. Yi Futian's figure appeared in the void of the original realm. At present, he could sense clearly that the original realm was not a complete world. After the heavenly path had collapsed back then, it became known as the Void Realm. And now, he had returned to this land. To Yi Futian, the original realm was his homeland. Since he would become the path, he naturally chose his homeland. The space was empty, and the void was endless. He was the only person here. Yi Futian seemed even more lonely in the darkness. I'm sorry. Many figures appeared in Yi Futian's mind, and then he closed his eyes. The micro-world in his body started collapsing and caving in like crazy, transforming into a chaotic world. Yi Futian's consciousness entered it, combining with the world of chaos. With a loud boom, his physical body exploded into pieces. Many beams of light appeared in the endless darkness. These countless beams of light radiated out crazily, covering the darkness. In an instant, the light illuminated the entire mass of darkness and radiated out to the entire universe. The cultivators of the various continents and segmentums of the original realm all looked up to the sky. They saw a beam of light. In the faraway horizon, that beam of light illuminated the sky, shocking all of the cultivators. What had happened? The cultivators on all the continents stopped cultivating and walked out of their rooms. Countless people traveled through the air, gazing toward the dome of the heavens. They seemed to see a tree growing wildly in the universe enveloped in light. The tree seemed to be the tree of the universe, the tree of the world, growing between heaven and earth. The cultivators of the various continents suddenly felt something blinding. They raised their arms to cover their eyes. It was as if a formless beam of light swept over their bodies. They sensed the aura of the world, and it seemed that everything had changed, but they could not pinpoint what exactly was different. The tree in the universe gradually became illusory, as if it was fusing into the world, transforming into part of the universe. The former God's Ruins continent had become vibrant and full of life. There were many cultivators of the Renhuang plain here. When they sensed the changes of the world, their hearts started pounding furiously. At that moment, they all looked up to the sky and bowed. Was this a miracle? Even a god or someone of the great emperor plane would not be able to do this, right? Unless it was a supreme figure who completed the path of the original realm today and would now have a complete law of the great path. Who was doing all of this? The people of the original realm gradually realized the changes of the world too. The people of the original realm gradually realized the changes of the world too. Meanwhile, Yi Futian perceived all of this. Of course, he no longer had a solid shape. After becoming the path, he had no physical body, no cultivation plane, no life or death. He could truly sense the path now. He was the path. Everything in the world was him. He breathed with the universe. Every beam of light and every gust of wind were his breaths. He perceived all the beings and saw their surprise and joy. Quietly feeling all of this, Yi Futian gradually understood why he must become the path. After becoming the path, he became one with the heavens and one with the universe. Every strand of qi flowing through the universe was him and the path. Yi Futian sensed Qingzhou City. The Qingzhou City that had been hidden before reappeared now. A breeze blew by. Yi Futian seemed to have come to Qingzhou City. With a thought, a tree appeared beside Qingzhou Academy. It was full of vitality and had spirituality. If he were still defeated, this tree would be the trace he left behind. After that, Yi Futian continued to feel for everything in becoming the path. Time passed bit by bit. The human realm, human ancestor, and entire heaven realm were trapped. They were still trapped in time by his master. In the human realm, the human ancestor continued to absorb all the energy in the world, refining the human realm more completely. Even the Time Walker could not hold him back for too long. At that time, the law of the great path in the human realm seemed to have melded into time, slowly homogenizing. At the same time, a voice traveled from within. "Walker, you and I are both ancient great emperors. Why must we fight? You cannot hold me back for long. Why don't you rule this world with me?" "Your fate has long been decided," Master said. "What do you mean?" the human ancestor said. Please reading, on IB0XN Uvel. "Calm, to be annihilated or be swallowed," Master replied. "I never believe in destiny or gods. I only believe in myself." The human ancestor's voice was frigid. "This is not destiny. It was what time told me. Do not forget who I am," Master said quietly. His voice was calm. He was the Time Walker. The human ancestor suddenly lost his temper. The aggressive law of the great path hit against the time. "You cannot stop me," the human ancestor said coldly. His aura spread toward the outside world. Right then, beams of tribulation light seeped into the space passageway between the devil world and human realm, entering the human realm. The human ancestor sensed the situation on that side. Then countless beams of red light surged in from that direction, continuously entering the human realm. They were tribulations, Tribulation forces of the apocalypse. In a concise time, endless blood-red tribulation light appeared in every corner of the human realm, rushing toward the heavenly path. The apocalyptic attack rained down, and the human realm shook. The power of the Devil Abyss. Devil Emperor? The human ancestor said coldly. Even if he had control of the Devil Abyss, this was still suicide. The human ancestor's mind twitched, and then countless beams of destructive light also rained down, countering the tribulations of the Devil Abyss. The entire human realm instantly transformed into a hellish world. All of the cities on the continents were filled with tribulation light. Yu Sheng's figure appeared in the human realm. He was shrouded with limitless tribulation light, hefting the divine battle axe of creation. The battle axe was wrapped in tribulation light, and his body was thousands of meters tall. He loomed over the world and hacked down at the path that the human ancestor had become with his battle axe. The battle axe split apart the sky. The heavens were hacked apart, turning into two halves. But at the same time, a beam of destructive light dropped down, landing in the area that Yu Sheng was in. It made Yu Sheng's spirit soul shake viciously as if it was about to disassemble. The battle shockwaves of the devil world and human realm were so horrifying that even Yi Futian, who had become the original realm heavenly path, could feel them. Yu Sheng. Yi Futian was still meditating, but he understood that he had to attack now. It would be impossible for Yu Sheng to defeat the human ancestor. Just as Yi Futian had predicted, Yu Sheng had come to fight in the human realm battlefield with the power of the Devil Abyss, but he still could not destroy the human ancestor. When Yu Sheng attacked with the divine battle axe of creation, countless pairs of eyes seemed to appear in the heavens. Each pair of eyes stared at Yu Sheng, locking onto him. Yu Sheng felt time and space become disorderly. He continued to hack down with his divine battle axe of creation, carrying the Devil Abyss and sweeping up to the heavens. However, a huge god appeared in the heavens. He sent out a punch, and the strength of an entire world was gathered on this fist. There were no additional movements, but this one punch could shatter a part of the sky. This punch passed through the world and sent Yu Sheng's body flying back into the passageway and devil world. Yu Sheng's body was about to explode, but he had formed the super demonic form, which was known as an undying form, and that was why he did not break apart. Even so, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. He was badly hurt. However, how many people in the world could survive a hit from the human ancestor? The evil emperor, one of the former 6 emperors, could not do it. The devil emperor could not do it quickly either, and Donghuang the Great had become the path to fight but still died. If the devil world wants to be wiped out, I can help you, the human ancestor announced. Mr. Time had left when Yu Sheng attacked, so the human ancestor was no longer restrained. However, while he was nurturing his strength, a loud explosive noise suddenly appeared. The entire human realm seemed to be collapsing and breaking apart continuously. A supreme and peerless path was invading, wanting to destroy the entire human realm. The heavens of the human realm were being destroyed madly. The human ancestor knew that Yi Futian had become the path and had returned to fight again. Yi Futian had become even more dangerous now. He was even stronger and had advanced further than his mother had. Countless beams of light from the path penetrated the human realm, destroying all existences, destroying everything in this dimension. The human ancestor's face appeared. His cold eyes stared at that side. With a thought, countless beams of destructive light also shot out murderously and clashed against the other lights. The world started cracking apart instantly. The human realm shook violently, and many frightening spatial cracks appeared. Earthquakes and tsunamis burst forth on countless cultivation continents, and the tribulations of the apocalypse rained down. 2 faces appeared in the heavens, Yi Futian and the human ancestors' faces, respectively. The entire human realm was collapsing and caving in crazily. That was the force that Yi Futian brought over. The power that could annihilate time wanted to utterly destroy the heavenly path. Do you think you can destroy me like this? The human ancestor stared at Yi Futian and said, I came from the ancient times and had transformed into the heavenly path many years ago. I am an undying god. The human realm has collapsed, and you will die too, Yi Futian replied. Really? My strength comes from the entire human realm. The human ancestor's voice was cold. After he spoke, the collapse of space slowed down, and the entire world seemed to coagulate. A frightening world force was blocking everything. Kaboom! Right then, Yuxing came again with the power of the Devil Abyss. Carried by the Devil Abyss, he hacked down at the human realm. The tribulations of the Devil Abyss instantly swept through the human realm, causing cracks to appear in the coagulated world. The human ancestor's eyes were icy. He took a deep breath, and abruptly, every being and item in the human realm turned into energy that he could use. Annihilate, the human ancestor uttered. As soon as he spoke, an immense quaking swept forth, and all forces destroying the time were extinguished. He carried the energy of the entire human realm and unleashed destructive shockwaves. Futian felt that he was undergoing a powerful attack. The path that he had become was shaken apart and destroyed. This god that had existed since the era of the heavenly path's collapse was frighteningly strong. However, Futian was also undying nowadays. He had returned as the path and was practically an endless and undefeatable existence like the human ancestor. At this time, a beam of black light suddenly projected out of the human realm. It was an extreme black. It seemed as if it came from hell. This beam of black light hovered above the human realm. On the battlefield, the human ancestor seemed to sense the energy contained within and glanced at it. It was a black lotus. Strands of chi emanated from the black lotus, transforming into a pitch-black figure. It was a young girl. When she appeared, she chanted words, and the surrounding world instantly darkened. It kept expanding, extending throughout the vast space until the entire world transformed into darkness. It was like it had been cursed. Qingyao. Futian did not expect that Qingyao would come to the battlefield. Had she already inherited the power of darkness? Plus, the power of death that Qingyao carried was no longer the simple divine power of death. It was absolute darkness and destruction. She had belonged to darkness and destruction since birth, standing opposite of life and creation. The human ancestor sent down a beam of destructive light towards Qingyao, but when it approached her, the destructive light actually faded and was extinguished. With Qingyao's body as the center, everything in the world fell into silence, returning to stillness. There was no vitality and everything was about to be annihilated. She walked forward. Everything in her path sank into absolute deathly stillness. She was going to bring death to the entire world. The human ancestor discovered that, under the patch of death, he was no longer able to borrow energy from the world. Everything returned to stillness. There was no energy that he could borrow. Countless beams of apocalyptic light shot down murderously at Qingyao, but a similarly frightening intent of the path swept forth. It shrouded his power. Futian had acted, causing the human ancestor's attack to be shattered and destroyed. Soon, Qingyao had walked to every corner of the world, spreading death across the vast world. Every place that had life was now under death and stillness. The tribulations of the Devil Abyss pierced into the heavenly path, dyeing the entire dome of the sky blood red. Futian's mind twitched. The sky continued to collapse and shatter. The scene right now was like how the heavenly path had collapsed in the War of the Heavenly Path in the ancient times. How can you surpass death? The human ancestor's voice filled the void. He was speaking to Qingyao. I used darkness as my sacrifice and surpassed darkness. Human ancestor, you bestowed this upon me, a voice said. It was not Qingyao's figure, but the Dark Sovereign. She had sacrificed herself. Bastard, the human ancestor bellowed. Clearly he also sensed the danger. You planned everything well, but today, it will come to nothing. Today, you will be destroyed, the Dark Sovereign's voice rang out once again. Futian descended madly with the path, causing the path created by the human ancestor to continue crumbling. The human ancestor's face in the heavens twisted. He finally realized that he was not truly undying or undefeatable. He could also die. If the heavenly path shattered and everything returned to stillness, then he would also stop existing. The ancient heavenly path had collapsed in the battle of the gods. Naturally, he could as well. Yi Futian, I will rule the human realm and you will rule the original realm. We will not interfere with each other, the human ancestor's voice streamed out. He seemed to be compromising, wanting to take a step back. Yi Futian ignored him. He was still destroying all of this. I control the most primitive power of the world and I'm extremely familiar with the nature of power. If you continue like this, you will accompany me in death, the human ancestor continued to say, but Yi Futian's group was still unmoved. The three of them did not stop. They continued to destroy everything crazily. The human ancestor felt his power weakening continuously. His face became more twisted. He was seemingly struggling. Yi Futian, have you thought about the consequences if we all die here today? The human ancestor continued to threaten them. You must disappear, an unrefusable voice replied. Suddenly, the human ancestor started laughing uproariously. I plotted for so many years and thought it was just a game. I did not expect to be defeated today. But in this case, let everything be destroyed. To nothingness. The instant the human ancestor spoke, Yi Futian suddenly felt extreme danger. All the remaining energy of the human realm exploded simultaneously in that instant. He could feel that when that energy exploded, everything would return to nothingness. It seemed to be the final state of his father's ultimate divine power. The human ancestor's face closed his eyes. Everything in his surroundings also turned to nothingness. That moment, he seemed to return to countless years ago when his mother and father were still there, raising him, and his master was teaching him cultivation. All of this had been destroyed in the War of the Gods. He had lost everything. And now, everything was finally ending. Without Yi Futian having to attack again, everything in the world was reduced to nothingness. The human ancestor controlled the heavenly path. He comprehended creation and also comprehended destruction. Once he unleashed to nothingness, everything would transform into nothingness, including himself. Yi Futian felt that his path was scattering wildly too, turning into the void. He could not help but feel fear. Yu Sheng and Qing Yao. The power of time enveloped the entire world, but it was useless. When everything was transformed into the void, there would be no time. Yi Futian used all of the intent from his path to envelope Yu Sheng and Yi Qingyao. In the span of a thought, he made his last-ditch effort. The next moment, his consciousness was also reduced to nothingness. The entire human realm disappeared. Under the human ancestor's ultimate destructive force, everything was turned into the void. Everything in the human realm no longer existed. It was as if this universe and world had never existed. A long while later, a group of figures suddenly traveled through the air of this dead world, appearing in the void. Strands of qi flowed from their bodies and gathered together, forming the human ancestor's figure. I will return, the formed body said coldly. Yi Futian and the others should have gotten destroyed too, right? Only a sleeping consciousness should remain from the heavenly path of the original realm too. Who would be able to stop him in the future? You will not return again, another voice streamed out at this time. The human ancestor's expression changed in shock. Then he saw a handsome and extraordinary figure appear before him. It's you, the human ancestor said coldly, staring at that figure. He watched as the youth extended a hand. Instantly, a horrifying windstorm vortex appeared. The human ancestor and those figures were all swallowed into the windstorm. Watching the human ancestor disappear, the youth raised his head and glanced at the endless void. Avenging you has been my long-term obsession, he murmured to himself. Today, I returned it all to you. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.